Hello and welcome to the week 11 video lecture for day 1. And this week you're going to be looking at articles that you already compiled from week 10 and stretching out the annotations to more fully realize those sources. You can use them in your paper. And on the understanding concepts, we see a section about plagiarism and annotations, and I'm going to pull up a student sample paper so we can look at an example of what I mean in reiterating that plagiarism is something to consider, particularly for a paper like this where you are reviewing 6 or more sources. And when I say reviewing, a lot of students think I can copy and paste a lot. And if we take this example sentence or this example paragraph, students often think that I can put whatever I want in the paragraph as long as at the end I have a citation. And then my reader knows that everything above was from that person, when actually it is the opposite. If you were to leave your paragraph like this, full of information about this source, the only thing that looks like it's cited this way is this last sentence. And then everything else is inadvertent plagiarism because it's very specific years, very specific details that require citations. And when you leave them off because you assume that citing at the end is the way to go in a paragraph, you are still plagiarizing. It's not as bad as just regular old plagiarism where you're copying and pasting from a friend or, God forbid, buying a paper off of a website or something. But it's inadvertent and it can still get you a 0 in some classes. And for me, it's going to lower your grade a lot. And depending on the severity, it might get you a 0 for the assignment. So a better way to avoid inadvertent plagiarism, make sure that you're citing what you need to cite, is to, a good rule of thumb for yourself is I need a topic sentence. I know that for my paragraphs. And the next paragraph or the next sentence should already introduce your source. The second or third, waiting further than that, and you're already probably getting into inadvertent plagiarism. You're citing details without the source information, and you don't want to do that. So let's press undo, and we can see on this paragraph where the citations were supposed to go to fully actualize this section. We can see right in the second sentence, and I had deleted that stuff, the student already introduced the source, Joshua Levine. They said the name of the article, which is not needed, but it's certainly helpful in a literature review or in an analytic exploration. The next sentence, they were it was more conversational. They didn't need to cite, but then they did cite again from the source. And if you are citing from the same source and it's just one source in that paragraph, you can kind of get away with just mentioning their name and not putting a paragraph number if you've already done that first off, but it's tricky territory. But so they did remind us that that's from that source. And then they did remind us again later on, and they did put the paragraph number. And then they ended the paragraph with a citation, which we know they're missing. But still, we'll forgive them because they at least cited what they needed to cite. And the paragraph was not that full of parentheses, but they did cite where they needed to avoid inadvertent plagiarism and to keep their credibility as a researcher. So that's the first part of the lesson for day 1. And the second part is, and there's some video links there that can help you too if you're more of a visual person, you want to see more context. for what I mean in terms of plagiarism and how to avoid it, these 2 video links could be helpful. In terms of annotations, you have completed annotations before, an annotated bibliography, probably maybe a million times over, depending on what schools or comp classes you've already had. But now, instead of those really short forms of annotating a source, just one sentence, boom, what is it about, and give me the works cited or the reference entry. Now you're going to do complete annotations for the 2 assignments due this module. So you're not annotating and doing it really quick, short. These are going to be thorough reviews and analysis of the source, and it's an annotation. And if you uncollapse this slideshow, it goes into depth about the difference between annotating and an annotation and why it's important for your assignment and why it's important overall in synthesizing or sewing together your 6 or more sources for your paper. And a reminder that anytime you annotate something, it should always follow that same format. And that means you choose APA or MLA, they all need to be in one formatting style. And then if you use, you number the first few, you should keep numbering all of them if you're going to do that, or using bullet points or whatever you're doing there. Blah, blah, blah. And similar to when we're thinking about writing a thesis or outlining, there's a template for how you could write a very thorough annotation. And we see examples here and where you could fill in your own information. And then a student sample that used that template, even though it says 1 through 4, you could really get 8 sentences out of this. And I'll show you a different sort of template in a little bit. But this is an expansion of the source. And the first part is really just a review of the source, almost a mini book report. The second part is analysis. What's important about the source to you as a researcher, to what you're focusing on. And because we're doing this now, here's your password for the day 1 lecture that you're going to need to fully, to get a good or a full grade. For your day 1 assignment, you need to type in that password where it's asking for that. But synthesis, an example of that in a paragraph, and I'm going to zoom out here back into this paper, this student paper that I'm always using to show you this is a good example of a literature review that's not just reviewing the sources and here is what it's about, but also giving some analysis and sewing the sources together in terms of major themes so that there's different sections of their literature review. And then if we go to their health concerns section, they are reviewing 2 different sources, Chaffetz and Ashby. And then when they're reviewing Ashby, because they feel like the theories sort of negate or even conflict with the source above, but they're both talking about health concerns, then in this second part, they throw together some synthesis of the 2 sources. They start talking about how the 2 sources play off of each other, how the points made by one or the other, Chaffetz and Ashby, compare and contrast in a way. And as you are drafting your own literature review and you start writing these different annotations, you will see how maybe they fit together like pieces of a puzzle, but you are going to have to explain either at the end of a section or what's even better is at the end of a paragraph, you're going to have to explain how one leads to the other in a bigger picture sort of way. so that it seems like there's a point to all of these reviews and analysis of these sources, and not just here's a source, here's a source, here's a source, which nobody wants to read that. They want to understand from your resource, your unique researcher perspective, what does this mean for this topic that you introduced me to at the beginning? What do all these sources mean in a cumulative way? And that's why you have to synthesize by adding in those points of analysis, usually at the end of a main body paragraph. And usually, at least after you've mentioned the first source, you're going to have sort of that base, that one source that you could go back and compare what they said against what the other sources are saying, and how that leads into the next thing and the next thing. So going over this slideshow on your own, very helpful. Going over understanding concepts on your own, reviewing this video lecture. I hope it has helped you to see sort of examples of what all of these readings are talking about. And then furthermore, in terms of that template that was in this slideshow, if you did stretch it out, and you need to for your assignments to make it fill out 2 paragraphs, this is a better template for that in understanding concepts. And this is what you can use for 11.1 and 11.2. Because let's zoom out to the actual assignment. And it's telling you, based on the 8-sentence formula from understanding concepts, you need to write an annotation of an academic article, ideally one that you already used from, what was it, 10.2, and you had to gather 6 sources. Why don't you just go back to that, pick one of those articles, you have 1 sentence already written, but you're going to go to understanding concepts, copy and paste that. Let me see. You're going to fill it in based on your source. And again, you already have 1 sentence of it, and maybe it's that one, and you can copy and paste it from 10.2, and you have part of this finished. And you're going to have to fill in the rest. And this part, this first paragraph, is mostly just little book report sort of style. Second paragraph is more, what do you think, and or how does this source compare to another source or another theory or another argument? And you submit it by March 24th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. You do have that 3-day late period leeway, but that's not when it's due. The due date is March 24th. And I'll see you for the next video lecture.